In today's DIY, I will show you how I made this absolutely stunning accent wall. It's not as complicated as it looks. Now this is what my living room looked before, and it was just a blank wall. It needed a whole lot of character. I'll show you how I cut the pieces, how to use a spacer to get the exact right spacing, and then how to build the interior box, plus tackling all these pesky outlets. Let's go! Hey guys, welcome back to my DIY channel. Today I'm going to show you how I made this show-stopping accent wall. Isn't it beautiful? It's timeless and it's actually not that hard to do. So I'm going to show you exactly how I made it. To figure out the spacing for your boxes, you need to know two things: the length of the wall and the height. So it's really hard by yourself to measure these things. So I actually have a laser measurer, and this is one of the best investments I made in my toolbox this year because it's pretty inexpensive. All right, so this is how this works. So basically, if you see there's like a light at the top, so you put it against your wall, and then you need to make sure that you can like see the dot on the other side. Right, so I'm just trying to get through all this stuff. And then when you do, okay, then you press the button and it will tell you how long that wall is. So this wall is 204 inches long. It would be really hard for me to use a measuring tape and do this by myself. If you head over to my website, I've got a really detailed tutorial of how to plan and measure for your space, and you can actually use that exactly as a guide. It's almost like a worksheet, so you can just plug in your numbers and go from there. So I'm going to break this project up into two steps. First step is to only do the outside rectangles. Okay, the second step will be to like do the inside detailing. So what you want to start with is the width and the height of your wall. So we'll do the height because that's the easiest. So I just decided that I'm going to leave a 5.5 inch gap on the top and the bottom, so I know what my length will be. Okay, now the width is a little bit harder. So I decided I'm going to do 4 boxes. Ideally I would have done 5, but they're going to be way too narrow. So I'm going to have 4 boxes. And so what you do is you know the spacing. So my spaces are all going to be 5.5 inches, and there's going to be 5 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so it's 27.5 inches, and I subtract that from my overall length. So this is what I'm left with. Then I divide this by 4 boxes, and I know each box will now be 44 inches. Before I even started to cut any pieces, I decided that I would give my wall a fresh coat of paint. It's really hard to actually paint your wall quickly once the panels are up. So the fastest way to do it is to paint your wall first, and then after the panels are up, you can just paint those really quickly with a brush. You're giving me wind and rain. You're some kind of butterfly. Before we cut this wood, we need to understand that every single piece will be cut on a 45 degree, which is called a miter cut. If you don't, there's absolutely no way that the decorative trim will line up. So the first thing I'm doing is just setting my saw to 45 degrees here, okay? And then I'm miter cutting all of them. So I cut all of these, and I'm doing that so I can use a stop block next. You're going to save yourself a ton of time by just chopping off that one end for every single piece, and then you're actually ready to cut your pieces to the right length. Now I only have 2 cuts to start with. I have this 44 and these ones, the long ones that are 81. So what I'm going to do is now I've cut this side, I need to cut this side, right? So the angle is going to go like this on the wood. So I need to flip the saw. Oops. Sorry, I'm trying to do this one hand. Okay, I'm gonna flip it all the way to 45. For the boxes, I only have 2 different pieces to cut. One is the horizontal piece and one is the vertical piece. So I can actually cut these really quickly by using a stop block. And so a stop block is when you clamp something down to your table, like a piece of wood, and then you measure the distance from the wood to the saw blade. And now I know that every single piece is going to be the same distance, so I don't need to measure it. So the reason I love using the stop block is that I've got more than half my pieces cut, like 3/4 cut in like 30 minutes. If I have to measure every single piece, I'm gonna be here for ages, and they're not even gonna be exact. Like, you really need to get them exact to make that perfect box. My friend here is out of nails, so I thought this would be a good time to kind of show you how it works. So this is a Ryobi pin nailer, so it's cordless, which is pretty much my favorite thing about it. I don't want to be getting on a step ladder with like an air compressor and stuff. So battery goes in. Here's where you put in the nails. The nails are super tiny, so they have this arrow on them that shows you like which way to put them in so that they shoot outwards. Okay, so you just put them in the slot. Sabrina wants to be fed. I'm gonna go now. And you just close it. And then when you want to shoot, there's this little trigger. It's like a safety trigger. And then you just push down and shoot. The fastest way to make sure that all your pieces are level is to, one, make sure that your walls are level. And if they are, then you can use a spacer. So I'm just using a couple of pieces of wood that are cut to the space that I wanted around each box. And then I'm just nailing them in. I don't need to measure, I don't need to use the level. And I just got all those pieces in really quickly. Now, I did hit a small roadblock because I didn't account for this outlet being there. So we just ended up actually closing up this outlet, and then I just continued on with my design. I'm using a pin nailer to install this decorative trim. And if you're wondering what the difference is between a brad nailer and a pin nailer is just much better for small, thin trim, because sometimes when you use a brad nailer, the nail is thick, so it might split the trim. With a pin nailer, the nail is so tiny that you can barely even see it, so it's much better and it doesn't split the wood. I also really like it because you don't have to fill any holes. You simply can cover up the holes when you paint it because the nail head is so tiny. I'm gonna do this a little slower because I'm getting a lot of questions to just kind of walk through it slowly. So I'm gonna put 2 of my spacers, okay, right here. This spacer ensures that this one will be level, okay? And I'm going to put my board, my first one. Okay, and I only put in 1 nail, okay? Just put in 1. Then what you want to do is you move your board across, okay? And then you put another nail in. So you can see this, okay? Now we're gonna do the vertical board, and it's the same thing, right? So we're gonna line up the miter edge right here, okay? And then we're gonna kind of push it up against this, the spacer. Nail it in. Okay, move your spacer up. And I was using my Level app on my other phone. So iPhones have this Level app, and it's pretty cool. Like, it will go green when it's level. So you can use this to double check. I feel pretty good with my spacers, but you can see it went green. Just nail it in. Yeah, just kind of, and then I'm not gonna nail the top yet, okay? Okay, I'll do the other side. I actually struggle a lot with how to design around the outlets because there's so many different ways, but I wanted to simplify, and because they're going to be mostly hidden behind the couches, I just went with this design where I cut the trim in half and then continue the design. You could just stop here at making 4 simple boxes if you wanted to. It looks really classic, it's beautiful, and it's actually really easy to do. But I wanted to take it a step further and add like a decorative box inside, so that's what I'll show you next. Take a deep breath. We're gonna start with the interior trim, and I know it looks scary, but it's really not that intimidating. Grab your cut list, which you should have from the worksheet on my website, and we can start cutting our pieces of wood. These are the pieces and the measurements that we've got to cut. I've got more details on my blog, but basically we need to have 2 trapezoids and 2 parallelograms that we're gonna cut. I had a question about how to measure these angled pieces and whether you should measure from like the outside angle or the inside angle. It actually doesn't matter as long as you're consistent that every single piece you cut, you measure the same way. So if I start by measuring on the outside angle, just do it every single time. Okay, if I mix them up, that's where it's gonna get confusing, where if I say like 5 inches and I measure from here for some and for here for others, like it's gonna be the wrong size. So as always, I have set up my stop block. This one I already cut to 45 degrees, so I know I'm gonna be starting with the parallelograms. I'm gonna measure 5 inches from this tip to where the blade is going to hit. So to make that kind of stair design, you actually need 2 that are like the opposite, so they fit together like this. So the way I set up my stop block for this is that I use the existing one I have, and I mark it on the back, and I only cut 1, okay? And then I make sure that they are exactly perfect, like the same size, and they are. You just put them back to back, right? And then you know they're gonna fit. I'd love to know if you use the stop block method. Let me know in the comments because it is my #1 time saver. I am always DIYing with my kids, and I always work in like small increments of time, like 30 minutes here, 20 minutes there. I never get like hours on end. So this is a great way for me to save time when I do projects. Check this out. I laid all my cuts down, and yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That perfect cut. To start on that inside design, I'm going to first nail that bottom piece right in the center, and then I'm just going to work off of that one. Make sure you continue to use your spacer so that everything is level and evenly spaced. Isn't it so exciting to see that first box come together? I really love this design. I think it's classy and elegant, but also has a modern twist on it. So over here I have to deal with the outlet again. So what I'm gonna try and do is just make this cut that's gonna go around the outlet. So it's gonna sit like that, and then it should just kind of like sit around the outlet. I decided to use my reciprocating saw. I'm not exactly sure which saw would be the best, but because it was such a tiny cut to make, I just felt like I was most in control with the saw. Pretty much perfect. It's very good. Good. If you're loving this project, make sure to subscribe to my channel and give me a thumbs up. And if you've been counting the number of outfit changes I have, well, when I made this accent wall, I actually had a newborn. She was like 6 weeks old. So yeah, it definitely took me a few weeks, but it was really relaxing to just, get away from constant nursing and mom duty to do something like this. So these outlets keep on getting the best of me. So interestingly, these 2 outlets are actually not level. They're off by like 1/4 of an inch. So now when I put this here, bam, right on top. Why? Why? I used my jigsaw to cut this out, and I think it fits pretty perfectly. I wish we could say we're done once we finished installing all the trim, but that's just not the case. If we really want that professional finish, we need to caulk every single seam. And in this case, there's a lot of them. So what caulking allows you to do is it basically allows you to close any seams that you might have between the trim and the wall. Honestly, this trim is actually quite good. I don't know if I really need it. I'm gonna get started and see. But here, I'll show you guys, okay? So you can also do this with a damp rag. I got my assistant here. He's gonna do the baby wipe. So basically, you put a thin bead okay, along the seam. Okay, so now Mikhail, can you wipe that with your baby wipe? Just take it along the edge. And just go down like that. Great, really good actually, nice work. But as you can see, it makes a huge difference when you caulk versus the places that there is no caulking. The caulk just allows you to kind of close the gap between the trim and the wall, so it just looks a lot more finished and professional. There's actually a lot of caulking involved in this project because you have to do both sides of the trim, like the inside and the outside. So this is a great little project to get your kids to help you with. So here, typically you would actually use wood filler. You'll see a lot of people doing that. I like to use caulking because wood filler is not very easy to use. So I'll just go in, caulk this, and then again with a baby wipe, we will wipe this clean.
I want to do it.
You can do the straight ones, okay? I'm gonna do these a bit. Because for these ones, you have to kind of get it into there, into the crack, you see? And then you can just wipe top. Okay, I don't need to do these holes because they're so tiny that the paint will just fill right into them. Okay, I gotta nurse Serena, but what you want to do when you take a break is close up your caulking and nails, okay? Otherwise it will dry right out. Grab my wall paint and an angled brush and started to paint all the trim. Because I used pre-primed boards, this was really fast. I only had to do one coat of paint to give it a really nice finish. Ready to see the reveal of the space? This is the before, and here's the after. Isn't that absolutely stunning? That accent wall looks like a professional made it, but if you're diligent and you use a stop block to make every single piece the same size, and you use a level and a spacer, you can pull this off too. This is a great twist on a traditional panel molding. It adds so much character, and it makes your walls look so much taller. So here it is. I am so thrilled with the result of this accent wall. I think it's beautiful. You know, like all the pieces are perfectly level. You gotta take your time to do that, but it's really something anyone can do. If I did it with a newborn, you could do it too. And if you'd love to add a fireplace to your living room but you don't have one, I made this. This used to be a blank wall and I used an electric fireplace. I have a tutorial for this as well. I absolutely love this DIY. It's definitely made so much impact on my living room that had almost no character. And if you love this DIY too, make sure you subscribe to my channel, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you next time for my next budget DIY.